The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, everybody. It's Tuesday, so that must mean another best practices webinar. We'll be back in an hour, in a minute. Countdown to reopening, expert insights on preparing for the future while dealing with uncertainty. This is our 5th part in this ongoing series. And again, we'll be back in a minute. Let some folks pile in, and we'll talk to you shortly. Hello, everybody. My name is Rick DeRico. I am the Director of Public Relations at Transfinder. I'm also going to be the moderator of today's webinar. I just want to welcome you again to Countdown to Reopening, Expert Insights on Preparing for the Future while Dealing with Uncertainty. Every day there's new developments and schools are having to make adjustments, it seems like, on the fly. And so that's one of the reasons why we put these webinars together. So really, unlike almost any other industry that I'm aware of, how closely knit the transportation industry is in schools and how much they want to help one another. And so what we do today is we bring real people who have boots on the ground and they share what's going on in their district. And that's something that we hope will be helpful to all of our attendees. A couple of things I want to mention. For starters, this is being taped. So all of our webinars are taped and they will be put on our best practices page, which is found right off of transfinder.com. So it usually has slideshows too, or any other useful information. So make sure you take a look at that at transfinder.com. I also want to mention that we have an app that we've made available for free, really for the remainder of the school year, December 31st. It's StopFinder Communication, and that's a communication tool for you, whether you're a client or not. We want to make that available. It helps you to communicate with your parents. It's a two-way communication tool. It's secured. And it's a great way if you want to really avoid parents going out there to get information, instead to get it directly from those that really know, which is your office. Then this will help them to send you a quick text and you can get back to them immediately as well. It's also a great tool that we're finding more and more that interdepartmentally schools are using it. So you can communicate with your superintendent or other departments as needed. So to get started, go to free StopFinder at transfinder.com and we'll get you started. You know, we really want to just focus on, we believe that this is a team effort and Transfinder wants to be part of that team as well. This is, I know you can hear me and you'll be able to hear our panelists, but we won't be able to hear you. But what we can do is we're monitoring the questions that come in. And so our hope is to get to as many of those questions. We do have our own slate of questions, but we will hope to get to as many questions as possible that come from our attendees. So please file early and file often, as they say. And we'll bring these before our experts. So now it's my pleasure to introduce our panelists. I'd like to introduce Nancy Clavette. She's a dispatcher at Oyster River Cooperative School District in Durham, New Hampshire. We have Lisa Huppe, who's the transportation director at Oyster River. And finally, Steve Lake, he's the transportation director at Southwest Allen County Schools in Fort Wayne, Indiana, which got hit with some pretty serious storms last night. Correct, Steve?
Yeah.
Yeah, you're still with us. You still, I don't mean that you're with us. I mean, obviously you're with us, but I mean that you still made it to the webinar, which we appreciate.
Yeah, I had to clean up a lot of sticks and a lot of tree limbs, but we're here.
Yes, well, thank you so much, Steve. And on top of that, school opens tomorrow for you. So we will not go too late. We're going to end it on time because I know you got a lot of things that you are probably knocking at the door for you. Just want to share a couple kind of, I've done this in the past and thought I'd do it again today as a kind of a rip from the headlines about where we are today and kind of give you a sense of what most of these are going to sound probably very familiar. They may even be your own school district, some of these stories. Just quickly, this is from nj.com, New Jersey, and the headline is Reopening Classrooms an Impossibility, New Jersey School District says as 375 teachers refuse to return. And that happens to be New Jersey's largest school district, Elizabeth, and their board literally voted late last night to start school all remote. So that's, again, breaking news. The Wall Street Journal has a story that's titled The No-Win School Reopening, One Superintendent's Dilemma. This is in Dallas. Superintendent says, it's better for us to come in. It's unprofessional if kids are yelling in the background, dogs barking, husband walking back and forth in the back. And then he says, we cannot afford to get further behind. And then, so that's obviously two pieces of the puzzle there. And then, of course, we've all seen, I think, the Georgia school district where there are classes where the kids were in the hallway kind of crammed. And, you know, there's more to the story, obviously, than a picture. And those were between classes and, you know, that's just what happened. But I think it's one of those things that nobody wants to be in the news for that kind of thing. So we're going to talk about media coverage as well. During part of this webinar, I know Steve has been interviewed quite a bit in the local media, and I want to tap his brain on best practices there as well. So I wanted to start looking from my screen, going left to right, and just ask you, I'll start with Nancy, then Lisa, and then Steve, if you could just tell me a little bit about you, your role at your school, and a little bit about your school.
Nancy Clavette, Oyster River. I'm dispatcher and also the assistant to the transportation director. I've been in this position since 2012. I've actually hold my school bus license since 1986. So I've been driving a lot and been on many roads.
Excellent. Well, Nancy, I may tap you again because I'm doing a school bus panel soon.
I saw that.
Great. Lisa.
Yes, I'm Lisa Huppe. I work for the Oyster River Cooperative School District as well. I am the transportation director. Nancy works with me closely, getting our routes together and providing transportation for our district. We are not a school bus company. We are part of the school district, so it makes a little different from your typical busing. So things do run a little bit differently.
Great, great. And Steve.
Yeah, my name is Steve Lake. I've been in this district for 35 years. I started out as a high school teacher, 13 years as a school administrator at that high school, and then I've moved over to the administrative side for the district, and I've been the transportation director for 4 years, and I do hold some other things that I have to do for the district, but our transportation department is also a part of our school district, and we've got about 7,300 some kids in the district, and we haul about, we've been off and on somewhere in the range of 4,500 students a day.
I never heard it described as hauling them.
We haul them.
I like that.
I call it our rolling petri dish.
Oh, that's very encouraging there.
Yes.
So Steve, of all the positions you had, just quickly, which one's the most challenging? You teacher, administrator, now where you are?
Well, they're all very similar. You're dealing with people and you're dealing with emotions, and you know we're all in this together. We're all service providers. I would say that all these positions have been very, very similar. Our district is a very good district. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been here as long as I've been here. So. But it doesn't matter where you go in the district, you're going to run into the same problems and you just have to be a problem solver. I keep telling people I'm the custodian of people. I carry a lot of keys and I fix a lot of problems. That's about what we do as directors and as administrators and teachers.
That's great. That's awesome. I tell my kids who are now adults that the best way to stay employed is to solve your boss's problems. You know, you don't want to be like, oh, here comes Rick again, and you know, another problem. So try to solve those problems. That's great. Well, let's just start with a little bit of, and since Lisa and Nancy, I know you guys tag team a lot, which is awesome. And so feel free to jump in at any point. I want to get a sense of, you know, what is the main issue that your district, and Steve, you're opening tomorrow, so it's closer to home for you. What's your main issue as you focus on reopening in your district? And I guess I'll just start with you, Steve, and then we'll go to Lisa and Nancy.
Well, we've tried to simplify everything that has come our way. We've gotten reams of stacks of things from the state and from the national people and all across the nation. And I think masks are one of the most important things that we're going to use because we found that the distancing part was not practical for the buses. Even in schools, the distance, you know, we're going to distance when possible. Cleaning is another component that is absolutely critical and important to the parents. So those three things have been probably the biggest, the big three for us.
Are you doing alternate? Well, I'll get to that later because I do want to hear a little bit about what your days are going to look like. Lisa and Nancy, go ahead.
I have to agree with Steve. The health and safety of the students, social distancing on the school bus is impossible. So doing what we can do to ensure it to be as safe of a school bus ride as possible for them. Also keeping in mind that their mental health is very important as well when getting on the bus, because these children are also going through unprecedented times and they're terrified. So their mental health is as important as their physical health.
That's actually a very good point. Nancy.
Right. Yes, absolutely. You know, especially when they're getting on the bus and they have a mask and the bus driver has a mask and the only thing and behind a screen, and the only thing they can see is their eyes. And, you know, children a lot of times will look at people through their eyes, which could make them at ease. But that's true. Their health and safety is foremost in getting them to get their education that they so need, especially the little ones. They've been harmed so much by this. So in helping them to achieve that.
I think I heard a little bit of your New Hampshire accent coming out there.
Oh no, I thought I didn't have one. My mother's from California.
I hope I'm not in trouble. I'm just teasing you. I went to school in Boston.
That's okay.
And I pick it up.
Well, sometimes that comes out, and also New York. You know,
yeah, that's great. So, give me a sense of. I want to get into what your model looks like, at least now. But before we get to that, I just want to get a sense of what kind of feeling you're hearing on the street from your parents in terms of comfort level. And are some of them? Are you thinking that some of them are going to delay putting their kids on a bus, still sending them to school, or are there some that are going to delay having their kids go to school, period? And then are there some that's going to say, nope, business as usual. First day the bus rolls by, my kid will be on it. What are you hearing from your districts?
I think for Oyster River, at least for Durham, Madbury, and Lee, New Hampshire, Oyster River, they just sent out their new registration. So Lisa's going to get bombarded with all these parents who are registering their children, whether or not they need transportation. Some parents, they have been given, you know, three. They can either be a hybrid, which is a little bit of both, remote and in school, or they total remote through VLAX, which is a virtual learning program, or also remote through the school. And then, of course, the in-school. And that's going to be separated. And it's going to be a task for transportation to achieve because of where the rural district and the distance apart. And Lisa can probably expound on that more. So, yeah, it's a challenge.
It is. Go ahead, Lisa. You want to expand on that?
Yeah, so what the district did here was they sent out a survey to the parents because we were, every meeting that we've had and we've met throughout the entire summer with the A-team, they call it, for the directors and leadership, is really, a lot of it has to do with how are parents feeling about this. So our district sent out a survey to the parents, primarily how they felt about the different models that were outlined, whether we would do a full start back to school, hybrid, remote. So the parents, 1,700 parents, we have what, a little over 2,100 students, Nancy. So 1,700 responses to the survey.
Wow.
The question, well, they've been waiting. the biggest question for transportation was, are you planning on putting your child on the bus? And it was very interesting that 42% of the people who responded said yes, they would be putting their children on the bus. 58% said no. 70% of those used transportation in the past. So I think it gives us a better idea of what to plan for. And then what Nancy had said with the registration, part of the registration, they do online registrations and they have mandatory questions, is how is your child getting to school? And the options are bus, parent transport, driving. And that will give Nancy and I a better idea of who's going to need AM transportation, who's going to need PM transportation.
And then I want to go to you, Steve, but if a parent opts out initially, are they opting out for the semester? Or are they opting out until they feel comfortable, and can they come back in before they,
They're going to do it. They're going to do it quarterly, because we have the 77, most of our buses are 77 passengers, and realistically, to be efficient, I mean, one to a seat sitting by the window. So you're looking at 26 students max on the bus. So right now, I don't know exactly what that looks like. They just opened up registration yesterday. So hopefully by the end of the week, I'll have a better idea of how many are going to be using the bus, which will determine how many buses I put on the road. So once they opt out, it will be quarterly, and they can make that, the poll will go out again in 9 weeks.
Okay. So Steve, what's the feeling you're hearing? I mean, you're on the cusp of this already, so you already know. So what is the sense?
We're very similar to what the others talked about. We did a survey early in the summer, and through our registration, which we completed a week ago, we had those same questions on there. Sadly, we saw quite a bit of change from our survey, not quite a bit, but we saw enough change from our survey to our registration that it required that we go back and do a lot of massaging to what we're trying to do.
Trending down?
Pardon me?
With fewer opting in, or what was the difference?
We have more dropping out. Right now we've been doing e-learning for 8 years now, so we're very fortunate. Our kids have had laptops that they've taken home. We're in our 8th year, so e-learning to us has been really pretty successful, but you can only go so many days with e-learning and be effective. And so we're offering 3 different options to the parents and the kids. One is e-learning, one is obviously on-site, and the other one we have is a virtual learning, where now we've got cameras in the classrooms and the teachers are mic'd, and they will be teaching and kids will be watching the teachers live, and that'll be that will be different from e-learning. And that was for some of our alpha kids and some of our college-bound kids, because those courses are so hard to do online through e-learning. So we've got those 3 options, but we're about 80% of our kids are coming to school. But out of that 80%, the number that are actually riding the bus has daily, even up to this morning, continues to drop. And right now we're probably hauling, I don't have a current number, but we're probably hauling about 3/4 of what we normally would haul.
Wow. So are you going, and then I'll ask you this, Lisa, as well. I mean, is it A, B days, that kind of thing, or is it every day is the same? Every Monday?
Yeah, we're full go. We're going full. We're going. You know, we're going to go a normal school day with what we have. They've made a lot of adjustments in the schools, and we've made a lot of adjustments to get them there. So we're gonna give that a go.
Lisa, what's it look like for your district? What's your start date, by the way?
Our start date is September 8th. Is that right, Nancy?
The second.
September 2nd. Okay. And we, the board just voted that it's changed again since we talked last, but the board has voted that K through 4 would be going half-day sessions. They would be divided into AM and PM, and they're only going to be going 4 days a week. That 5th day out of the week gives the teacher an extra workshop day to prepare. The middle school and high school are remote with targeted students.
Okay.
Which targeted students could be, I mean, we have 4 schools, so targeted students could be freshmen, first year in the school, and our middle school would be the 5th graders, first year in the school, kindergartners, first year into school. So.
Now, we talked a little bit about this yesterday in preparation for today about just having a seat at the table, and you know, how the district is making its decisions, because you know, you can't just look at transportation. I mean, you can't ignore transportation. So, you know, just say we're going to have all the kids from A to L go on Monday and Tuesday, and all the kids from M to Z. That's not how they live. We don't live alphabetically. So how important it is to have transportation at the seat of the table of decision makers. I'm just wondering, have you been in, either one of you, all of you, been a part of the decision making process before they're finalized?
I have not, because I am under Lisa. She is the director.
Okay,
She
Lisa.
has.
Okay, Lisa and
Yes.
Steve.
Go ahead,
Yes,
Lisa.
we've been a part of the decision making or consulted regularly on different ways of doing transportation. I was asked to come up with a few contingency plans as far as you know, if we were to do full start, what would that mean for transportation if they did hybrid, remote, that type of thing. So yeah, we've been pretty involved.
That's great. It's great to hear that, because I know that there are some that have felt like, you know, we just get things like handed to us and then we have to try to figure it out. And it's nice to hear. Steve, how about you?
I would agree. I've been very, very fortunate. I've been a part of everything that they've talked about. And if you're in a district where that hasn't happened, I would encourage you to stop in and personally, don't email or call. I'd stop in and see your superintendent in a positive way. And it's all about team. And if you can convince them that they need to understand that, and I'm sure they do, getting kids to school and getting them home is extremely important, not only to the parents, but to everybody in the district and the way that it's going to happen. I know our principals were very happy to work with me. Our drop-offs are going to be within 7 to 8 minutes of the start of school. And it was very important that we work together to make that happen, because our bus drivers are telling our kids, when we pull up, go straight to your first period class. There will be no standing in the hallway. Well, it's easy for me to say that. It's going to happen. But we're not giving them much time. And so I agreed to, we've been working, changing our routes around to get that timing down as close as we can, because we're going to drop and go, meaning that we're going to pull up. We're not going to sit and wait for them to open the doors up and let us in. We're going to drop, and those kids are going to go straight to their first period classes.
Are they taking temperatures at the school, or no?
We're not.
How about you guys, Lisa?
I think Oyster is planning on taking them at the school. The parents are been given a set of guidelines to screen their child before they leave the house, and when they put them on the bus, we are hoping that they have done that, and then as they get off the bus, they're going to be screening them before they go into the school.
It just wasn't practical for us. We've got, we have 2 middle schools that are over 1,000 kids apiece.
Yeah.
Our high school is really large. We only have 1 high school, so it's very large, and just the mass of kids that arrive within that window, it's just not very practical. So we're going to get them. We did the same. We told our parents that you need to monitor your children. That's your responsibility. And we're going to hope that they do that. And obviously our teachers are going to be very heightened to that, and make sure that the kids are being honest with them if they're not feeling well.
That's good. Yeah, I know sometimes things look good on paper, and then when you think about the number of kids waiting in line to get their temperatures taken outside of the school, that's a good point. Lisa, I want to talk a little bit about something that's going to be happening in your school. Both you and Nancy can talk a little bit about. Bridget, could you advance to the next slide? Something you're putting on your buses that you're the first that I've talked to that are doing this. So can you share a little bit about what we're looking at in this in these two photos here?
Yes, these are transit or driver barriers. They are 16 mil fire resistant PVC curtains. We purchased them through one of our bus dealers who, lost my train of thought. Sorry about that. We purchased them because the state of New Hampshire Department of Transportation approved these to go on the school buses. Now you'll see the shield comes across the side of the driver. That's for when students get on the bus, because the students come within less than a foot of the bus driver as they get on the bus. So this is added protection for the driver. However, when the bus is in motion, that curtain must be opened. So there cannot be any visual impairment with the curtain.
Okay.
They're about a little over $400 a piece. They are on the expensive side, but it will give that added protection to the bus driver.
So he or she, will they be wearing masks still, or?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep, anyone who gets on the bus has to wear a mask. The students have to wear a mask. However, that will give them that extra protection behind them, behind their head, and as the students getting on the bus.
Because we've heard some that said that you could have the driver has to have the mask on when the kids are coming on, but then once the bus is in motion, they can take it off. But again, we're getting varied opinions. Steve, you're not doing a barrier like this, correct?
No, our state, we went through some of this stuff. Our state, and once again, everybody needs to understand, I'm sure your listeners do, that all communities are different and all states are different. In our state, we're not allowed to have anything like that barrier put up. I think it's a good thing for some communities, like the one that was just talked about. I mean, I think that's an interesting, I've never seen that before myself. We're not even allowed to have any hand sanitizer on the bus because it's considered a hazardous or flammable material.
Right.
The kids can have it in their backpacks, but we can't have dispensers on the bus. So our drivers are wearing masks. We're going to do the best we can with that, and we're going to go from there.
Yeah.
Are you going to add something?
For us, I mean, our drivers will wear masks. I mean, they're not going to be wearing any goggles because that also can distort the vision, if I'm not mistaken on that.
Okay.
So
we did get some face shields in. However, after getting them in and trying them out, they do distort the vision. So we kind of ruled that out. New Hampshire's guidelines for drivers wearing masks is that they have to wear them unless they absolutely cannot. The barrier will come in handy if that is an issue.
So I want to talk about, I got a question here from Ann. Bus stop to receive their child off the bus. This is not, I guess, directly related to COVID, but I guess, are there any thoughts or solutions? Have you had that kind of issue?
well, we've had many times, especially K through 4 is when they have to have a guardian or an adult or an authorized person. Well, 3 and 4 can be released, but the K and 1 can't, a K to 2. So many times we've brought the children here. So I've stayed with the student until the parent arrives. It's happened probably 10 times last year.
Wow.
Well, before March 16th, I should say. So
Right.
I would prefer to have the children here in our transportation department than bring them to a police station. So that's what we do. We make the contact with the parent.
Yeah, Rick, we have a K through 2 second grade system very similar to that, where a parent has to be present. Anything beyond that, if we'll wait for a certain amount of time, the bus driver will contact our office. We'll call. If we don't get an answer, they move on. And then if they aren't anywhere near that drop towards the end of their route, we have them take the kids back to the school. And the school has after school daycare there, and the parents are charged for the kid being dropped off and having to be watched.
Yeah, a lot of times our schools, the teachers are gone. There may be, I'm not even sure it's going to be allowed to have the daycare after the school during this coming year. We haven't gotten the list of anything from the daycares for both schools, elementary. So that is it, it never panned out for them to be charged to bring to one of the daycares because they only can have so many students based upon state law.
Yeah. Back to the COVID question, maybe the person was asking about in the morning when we drop at the schools, first of all, when we load the buses, our elementaries are all going to have seating charts. It's required for contact tracing and just to reduce the spread of possible spread of the COVID. We're asking kids to sit by their siblings. That way we can reduce it in that manner. But when we do put them on the bus, we're putting our seating charts are designed from older kids from the back to the front, very similar to what a normal seating chart would be. And then when the schools bring the kids out, the elementary schools bring the kids out, they're going to bring the oldest kids first. And so we're going to load once again from the back of the bus to the front of the bus. Just some other precautions that we're trying to put in place to alleviate kids being in contact with each other.
Yeah, that's right. And added that this is to minimize the exposure to.
But the only drawback on that, because it should, we're going to be putting first on way in the back. So no matter what grade they are, is my knowledge. So that way, they'll be at least exposed to anybody else. And then the afternoon, it's like they're going to have to board the bus as they're getting off first instead of last.
Well, and that's why we didn't, and once again, different communities, different ideas. We had a long discussion about that. And our elementaries are so big that there was no way that they could sort the mail, as I call it, and get the kids on the bus in the order that they got on the bus. We would be sitting there for a half hour to 45 minutes before we would even get out of the elementary schools, trying to load them in the correct order. So once again, it all gets down to the size and the numbers you're dealing with.
Right, absolutely.
We had a panelist weeks back now. They're kind of blurring together. I promise you won't blur together. You guys will always stand out to me. But all the other panels, and one of the things that they had, they were talking about on the way coming back home, they were going to literally do that, sort the mail, Steve, and put the kids in the order that they were in the morning. So, but that does.
If they can do that, that's wonderful. We kind of did some testing, and we just right now we don't have the time. I mean, if parents don't mind their kids getting home a half hour to 45 minutes later,
yeah, right,
that would be okay.
That opens up another problem. Yeah.
Right, and you're only dealing with 26, on a 77 passenger, where you might be dealing with 77 on a passenger. So
we will be
rather difficult.
Yeah.
So Lisa, someone just let a question up regarding the barrier. They wanted to know if there was any additional protection for the bus attendants.
We don't have bus attendants, so it's just the driver.
Okay.
Yep.
I
If we
want-
were to have any adults on the bus, it would be gloves and mask.
Okay. All right. By the way, quick question, Lisa, you used that word. I wanted to bring it back again, and then we're going to go to a poll. I want to ask, you mentioned contingency plans.
Yes.
And I'm wondering, both Steve and Lisa, could you guys share about how many, did you guys have multiple contingency plans? What if scenarios?
You're going first, Steve, because you start tomorrow.
We've had so many. If we've had so many plans that I've thrown in the trash and started over with since the start of this thing. And one thing I have learned from this is to be very patient and sit back and kind of let the dust settle. In the meetings anymore, the Zoom meetings, and I'm sure everybody's sat through hundreds of those. I sit back and let the, because there's constant back and forth, and yeah, there's just been so many different contingency plans and that have gone by the wayside. So I've really taken my time to make sure, is this what we're going to do? Once the schools commit to it, then I jump on and get something put together, but not until they commit to it, because I've spent hours working on things and they change their mind, and
Right.
I don't have
Lisa,
time.
Steve, you sound like one of those guys I've seen in meetings before who doesn't say very much. Maybe even some meetings they don't say anything. And then when they say something, it's like E.F. Hutton. I know I'm dating myself, the commercial, but everybody you want to hear because Steve is saying, are you one of those guys?
Well, it just over after I've been in the game for 35 years, and the longer you sit, and I take good notes and I try to listen, but the debate seems to go around and around, and it usually ends up right where they started, which is usually the best plan.
Yeah.
Lisa.
Yeah, pretty much the same thing Steve all just said. We've gone before the board many times over the summer to have our plans tweaked, changed around by the board, rejected, starting from square one. It's just, you have to be patient. You have to kind of go with the flow. It's not, I mean, whatever we put into place now probably is going to change weeks down the road. So you just go with the flow and you know, everything Steve said.
That's good. All right, we want to take a poll. So Bridget, if you could bring the poll up, and we're going to ask all of our attendees to take this poll. I'm also going to ask Nancy, Lisa, and Steve, if you guys could answer this as well. It's about taking attendance on the bus. And so, you know, are you going to take attendance on the bus? And if you are, so are you using the card readers, a software application? You don't have any plans to take attendance. You want to take attendance, but you're still not sure yet how to do that, or you're going to use pen and paper, but you may be interested in technology. So I'm going to start with Lisa. What's your plans for the district?
Because we've got a maximum of 26 on our 77 passengers, we're pretty much going to do pen and paper.
Okay. And Steve?
Yeah, well, we're actually kind of in the middle with technology. We're testing out some tablets right now. I wish we were going to have them done this summer, but due to COVID and dropping out last year and not being able to finish our test, we did not get them purchased and did not get them in. But we were going to use tablets to take attendance, which is really a great option. But as of tomorrow morning, we will have seating charts, and that's how we will be doing our attendance.
Okay.
Weekly.
Great.
Yes, if I can just speak on that.
Please.
I plan on using the report because Route Finder does have an attendance form per trip. So that would be my plan, is once we do get the children set up, to be able to do that, print those out.
For record keeping purposes.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, since we're talking a little bit about tools, are there any tools that you guys have used that have helped you, especially in this unusual, setting that we're in right now to get ready for the fall?
I would say global replace. I've used that a lot, especially in the spring where we were returning locker items. We did a lot of materials bus runs, and we also did a lot of meals. So, global replace came in very, very handy. It enabled us to use the same database and use the checkoffs for disabled, non-disabled. I can't think of what some of the other ones are, but like we would use disabled for those who were getting lunches and non-disabled for those who were receiving locker materials. And then that way we could sort accordingly and create bus routes from that.
Okay.
Right.
Anything else, Steve? Anything?
Yeah, I just want the listeners to know that I have not been prompted by Transfinder to do a sales pitch for them, but I will say this. We've been using Transfinder now for about 4 years. We got away from a different software, and it has been so much easier to use, and we have saved so many man hours with Transfinder that everything that we've done through this COVID thing has been a lot easier than what we used in the past, and that's a tribute to Transfinder and their simplicity and ease to use, and their response if we have a question. It's been excellent.
Right, their support staff is wonderful.
Yeah,
they're right there to help us out.
That's huge.
Yes.
That's awesome. Yeah, I refer to them as our secret sauce. So,
Don't tell Bob that he's secret sauce.
Steve, I want to get to the media question, but I'm going to put that on the side for 1 second, and then I'm going to come back to you on that as well. But I want to talk about just how do you keep parents informed, and how often do you keep them informed? I know, Steve, it's tomorrow's D-Day, but maybe leading up to that, is it weekly? Is it as news comes in, or do you wait till things like you mentioned, the dust settles before you actually share something? I think people are kind of curious about. Go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, the last thing you want to do, and that's another reason why it pays to wait. The last thing you want to do is send something out to your parents and then you have to go back and change it fairly quickly. There's a lot of anxiety out there, and we're trying to reduce that, and giving parents information and then making changes is something that they're not comfortable with. So we have been very careful, and we've been very cautious about being transparent with our parents, letting them know everything that we can share with them, but not too much. If you send out too many emails or send out too many tweets or text messages or whatever, you're going to create, that Chicken Little situation where they're not going to continue to look at that information because they're getting too much of it. So we've been very careful not to overdo the information, but what we do send them has got to be extremely accurate and to the point and transparent.
So is that like is it like a secret, like perfect model there? And like, is it weekly? Is it, you don't want to have too much time go by with nothing. I know that, but you also, like you said, when you say too much, the one concern I always have is if I send you an email on Tuesday and then Wednesday there's a change, you may have missed that. So you're still operating on Tuesday's email information if Wednesday is different. So, well, is there a secret sauce in terms of best time to communicate?
I really don't believe there's a secret sauce to it at all. I think that it depends on, we have different levels of importance and information, but I would say we go at least once a week, usually Thursday or Friday. Our superintendent has been very good about sending out something to all the parents. And what I do is I feed, it goes up the chain to him. I feed him and he looks at it and kind of determines whether, what he thinks is the most important thing to go in his letter that goes out to parents, or the information that goes out to parents.
Okay. Lisa or Nancy?
Yep, exactly. Our superintendent sends out a weekly newsletter, if you will, to parents, and same thing. I give him information, he puts it in there. whatever he feels to be the most important piece that parents need. He's the one answering all the emails coming in from parents, inquiries about different things, so he knows what's best to put in there. But I also agree with Steve, the transparency is important. You need to make sure that parents fully understand, you know, you're all on the same page.
Yeah, yeah.
Also, with the newsletter is trying to keep the morale of all the staff. He you know, he thanks the staff for everything that, you know, they've done and for the district.
Let's stay on morale for a minute. That's a good one, Nancy. So how are your teams doing? Are they, and I know they're not monolithic, so you may have some people who
well,
are.
As far as I'm concerned, team transportation is perfect. All right, we have an excellent
Are you looking for a raise, Nancy?
together. Huh?
You're looking for a raise?
Well, I haven't gotten one yet, Lisa.
Like, how's the morale among the drivers, the routers, your teams, and I'll take it a little bit further than that. How do you keep it up, or build them up when they're going through a time
They just come in and see my face and they laugh, and we just keep it. What Lisa's shaking her head.
You do need
to really have good camaraderie amongst us. We do have a good group.
I wish I had a good story to tell you. I don't. We're short drivers to begin with. We've got 80 some employees, or I do, in this department. We started the year out short, as we start every year out, it seems like. And as soon as the drivers found out that we were definitely going back, I lost 4 drivers right from the start. So I was short, and now I'm shorter 4 drivers. There's a lot of, and our drivers that are in service that I just gave, I had to share with them that if we do not go back, there may not be funding for them to be paid. We did pay our drivers the last half of the year when they were at home. We did bring them in. They did haul some food for the district, and so I rotated them and we paid them what they normally would make every week. School corporation at this point, we're starting the school year off. We're not sure that can happen. And so I had to tell them that if the school does shut down, if the corporation shuts down, most likely they will not be paid. And so the morale here is a little tough, and we're doing the best we can to try to keep them pumped up, and they are excited to get back to work. They love the kids, they miss the kids, but there's a lot of emotion out there, and there's a lot of nervousness about the unknown in the future.
Yeah, I can definitely understand that. Steve, I want to stick with you for a minute. We talked a little bit about media coverage yesterday, and I just want to, in full disclosure, to be transparent, to use your word,
Right.
I am a recovering reporter of 27 years, and I covered education for a good chunk of that time. And you've been having some interviews with local media, and I am a big believer in engaging the media. I don't see the media as the enemy. I know that you have to be careful. I know that photo of the crowded classroom, you do need to have context to say, what is that? That was not by a reporter, that was by just a student. But the media kind of ran with it. But how do you engage the media, keep them in the loop? What's your approach? Yeah.
I try to do, I've had 3 different TV channels come in. Tomorrow morning, I'm being interviewed live at 5 o'clock in the morning and at 5:30 tomorrow morning. We try to do everything we can to, if the media wants to talk to us, we talk to them.
Right.
And as long as they don't shoot something at us that is controversial, and I guess when I say that, what I'm trying to say is, I guess everything's open because we're trying to be transparent. But I have had some reporters that try to back me in a corner to try to make something more out of what was going on. But we rarely have that. For the most part, here in our town, we've got great reporters, and it's been very good. And if I don't know, if I don't have an answer like I shared with you yesterday, I'll simply tell them, I really don't have a good answer for you right now. That was a great question. I'll look into that. I'll get right back with you on that. And usually that they move on from that.
Yeah, that's great. And I think, you know what, the last thing you want to do is try to think of an answer on the fly that maybe is not exactly the district's complete answer. So thinking on the fly, I'm involved in my church softball team, and I used to coach my kids' little league team, and I used always tell. In fact, yesterday I shouldn't throw this guy under the bus, no pun intended, but he wouldn't be on this webinar. So I'll tell you, the ball came to him. He's a shortstop. We had a guy on first. I mean, we're in the field. He needed to throw the ball to second, and we could have a double play. He didn't think in advance. He was getting ready to throw to first till somebody yelled, "Throw to second, throw to second." But the point is, you want to think in advance of when the ball comes to you and what your response is going to be, not try to think on the fly. And how that replies to my point to you is just that if you get caught with something out of the blue, and always a good answer, and I think it's a sincere answer, is to say, you know, I don't have a complete answer on that. So let me get back to you. That's not a cop-out. I think that's a legitimate answer. If you really don't have an answer, don't make it.
And that's a great response for parents in dealing with whatever you do. I mean, I'm sure any other directors that are listening know that the best response, if you don't have a good answer, is, you know, time is on your side. Time is our friend. I'm gonna wait and get some time that allows whoever is talking to me or asking questions to cool off, and it gives me a little bit of time myself to gather my thoughts and come back with a good answer for them, or a correct answer, so that we don't have to go back and correct it later.
That's good. That's good. Lisa or Nancy? Media coverage?
Well, we would have to follow the district's policy, which would be referring them back to the superintendent. So I would not, by policy, be able to have an interview with the media. Superintendent's really good at it.
Okay, good, good. I don't want to forget the poll responses. So Bridget, are you there? Can you get, if you are, I'm sure you are, I know you are, if you could give us a sense of how this played out.
Yes. So of everybody who responded to the poll, we have 48% who will be using pen and paper but are interested in some technology solutions. 39% have no plans to, will not be taking attendance. 14% would like to but aren't quite sure how. 2% will be using a software application, and nobody will be using a card reader.
Okay, great. Thank you. That's great. That kind of lines up with what we talked about here as well. So I want to talk a little bit about lessons learned in the midst of this process. So since March, you know, you are all veterans already, but now maybe a little more weathered veterans having gone through this, that may be useful even in the next situation. You know, hopefully this pandemic's going to come to an end, but we know that other things do come up. There's other situations, and you probably have all gained skills that make you that much more just prepared. And I'm just kind of curious, and I know I didn't prep you with this, but I'm just kind of curious if anything comes to mind of some lessons that you've learned, some positive things that came out of this pandemic.
I think for, oh, go ahead, Steve. Go ahead.
I was going to let you stick your neck out first, but probably the best lesson for me personally has been to take the time to understand that everybody's situation is so different, and everybody's emotion in this crisis is different, and I have to respect that. Everybody's political twist in this thing is different, and I have to respect that also. I need to take the time to listen to whatever they have to say and try to convince them. And we do this a lot now in our district, as we talk to parents and keep telling them we're on the same team. We're all working for one goal, and that goal is the safety of your kids. And if we can get parents to understand that we're all on the same team, we want to work with them and we need their support, that's huge. And that works for discipline, that works for everything that we do, and especially for this situation, because the parents are very emotionally caught up in this thing, as they should be. It's the most precious cargo on the planet, as we tell our drivers. And so we really have to be careful how we deal with emotion, and we really have to be careful of how we get those parents and get the community to think of us as a team player, not somebody that's out there trying to hide information from them, and not as some kind of a political twist, which it doesn't matter what party you're in favor of. We need to all work together for the safety of the kids. And if we keep that at the forefront, we're all going to be heading in the right direction.
So are you running for office? Because I'll vote for you.
Not really. I'm just trying to get through this thing so I can retire in a couple of years.
Yeah.
So Lisa or Nancy, you were getting ready to say something.
Well, that was, that was part of it. I know that when we were doing the meals and the homework, granted, we were all thrown into it, and it has taught me how to be understanding and compassionate, because I'm a very black and white person. This is this, and taught me to have more compassion, because some of our drivers did have anxiety, but they did not let that anxiety show to when they had to deal with the parents, or delivering the food, even though they couldn't make contact with them. So, they at least showed that and hid it from them. So I've learned to have compassion, and really I've tried very hard to keep my mouth quiet and listen. It's rather difficult for me, but I've tried.
Me too.
Listening is I think one of the most important things we can do for our community, our students, our teachers, our coworkers. You need to listen. You need to listen, because what they have to say to you is very real to them, regardless of what you think. And you never know when somebody's bright idea is going to change things for you. So listen and be open to suggestions. And hey, they may pan out, they may not, but as long as they know that they've got your ear and they can talk to you, yeah, I think it's really important.
That's great. Yeah, the Lord, I heard someone say, the Lord gave you 2 ears and 1 mouth. Use them in that proportion.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
We had a webinar panelist a couple of weeks ago who actually got his idea. It was kind of a novel idea of how they were going to be dividing up the district in quarters, and it came from the mechanic, one of the mechanics, who just saw things in a more mathematical way. And he goes, I never would have thought of this idea at all. So
Never know.
I want to close with a final takeaway. I'm going to start with Steve, and then Nancy, and then Lisa. I'm thinking about these final takeaways is that thing that if anybody just leaving this webinar who's looking for just something that they would maybe bring back to their team, or go back to the superintendent, or something they'd want to share with a parent, or whatever it may be, what's the one thing that you'd want them to take away from our time together? So again, I'll start with Steve, and then Nancy, and end it with you, Lisa.
Well, I think the most important thing that's worked for me is the communication part through this whole thing. Any way I can communicate, and once again, I want to thank Transfinder and everybody at Transfinder for doing what you're doing today. These are things that really help everybody out there, because like you were saying, if I'm sitting there listening to somebody on a webinar like this, and I can just take one thing from it that improves my community, that improves my job, that it helps my drivers, that helps the kids, keeps them safe, that's a win. And so it's just the communication and the ability to communicate with each other. I will come out of this webinar, I've heard some really interesting things, and I've got notes down here. I've been taking notes pretty much the whole time. It's just, the communication part is so important. And if you can just listen and be open to everybody, like you were talking about with that driver that had that great idea, I just think that's absolutely important.
Great, thanks, Steve.
You bet.
Nancy.
I think for me also, with everything that Steve, of course, says so eloquently, I believe that communication is, and that understanding, and being there for the parent, and to know, and to find out really, in talking with, Steve and you and other people from around the States, and maybe Canada too, is that we really are all in this as a team, and finding out that we're making these solutions to better all of us, not just our own district or just our own selves, but for everyone. And bring it forth to your people. You know, take these notes, research, take it to the board, take it to your school board members, to have someone listen as to your ideas that you may have. That's it for me.
I like that. I mean, I was thinking of what Steve said earlier in our talk about if you don't have a, like, for instance, you just mentioned briefly, if you don't have a seat at the table, just go stop in and say hi to the superintendent. Just say hi. You know, just that's a simple thing you can do right now. I have not had any. My superintendent never calls me. Well, how about just getting up and saying hello? Maybe you even bring a coffee to him or her, you know? So, Lisa, close us out.
I mean, I have to go with both Steve and Nancy. It's communication. It's for so many different reasons, knowing that we're not alone in this, knowing that we're not going through this. Everybody's kind of going through very similar situations. Just letting them, everybody who's out here know that we're all on the same page, and you know, it's important to keep communications open.
That's great. That's awesome. Well, I can't believe it's over. I know these things always go by way faster than I think they're going to. And then next thing I know, it's 2 o'clock and I'm like, wow, we're done already. But I just want to, first of all, thank you, Nancy, Lisa, and Steve for joining us today. Steve, you're going to be in our thoughts and prayers tomorrow as the doors open.
Yes.
It all goes well.
Let us know.
Yeah, actually, do let us know, and I'll share something on Facebook.
Yeah.
I want to also just encourage anybody who's on our attendee. I want to thank all the attendees, by the way. They stayed to the very end, folks. Just so you know, the attendees stayed the whole way through. And if you have a story about how your district is approaching your reopening, maybe you have a novel approach, maybe you've had to make some pivots along the way. We really are trying to document these, and these can be from clients and non-clients, or I call them future clients, about what you're doing, because we, like, as you all have said, we're all in this together, and I think if we can learn something from another district, a best practice, something that, you know, you never thought of, that's what we want to try to do, is help be a place where we can curate that information. It might make it as a webinar, or it might be just a white paper, or both. Also, I just want to reiterate what I said earlier, that I am working on doing a webinar. It'll be next week, the 18th, on school bus drivers. I really do want to hear from school bus drivers and how they're feeling going into the new school year, and just get some thoughts from there. So if you either are a school bus driver and you're on this webinar, or you work, you know, your team, if you could reach out to your team and see if any of them would be willing to participate. I promise we'll keep it to an hour. That would be great. Just email me. You can just email me at mystory@transfinder.com as well as your stories. That's it for now. I just want to, again, thank our panelists for giving us your time and your wisdom.
Thank you for having us.
All the best in your reopening.
Yes, thank you. Good luck
Thanks,
tomorrow,
Sarah.
Steve.
You bet.
Take care.
Bye.